Have you ever wondered how a remote island, cut off from the world for centuries, transformed into a global powerhouse of technology, culture, and innovation? Welcome to Japan, the land of the rising sun, a nation that today mesmerizes millions with its neon-lit cities, timeless temples, and breathtaking landscapes. Yet, surprisingly, this openness to the world is a relatively recent phenomenon. For over 200 years, from the 17th to the 19th century, Japan lived under sakoku, a policy that sealed the nation from outsiders. Foreigners were forbidden, Japanese citizens could not leave, and contact with the wider world was limited to tiny slivers of controlled trade. But what happened during this isolation was remarkable. Japan flourished culturally, economically, and socially in ways that would lay the foundation for its modern greatness. Art, literature, and craftsmanship thrived, and the seeds of a sophisticated society were sown in a land that seemed cut off from history's main stage. To truly understand this transformation, we must go back over 40,000 years, when humans first migrated from the Asian mainland. They brought agriculture, metalworking, and the first sparks of organized society. By the 3rd century AD, southern Japan had coalesced under the Yamato rulers, a centralized power led by the emperor, whose authority blended political control with spiritual significance. Over time, Japan absorbed foreign influences. Buddhism arrived from Korea in 552, and Chinese-style governmental reforms in 645 reshaped the political landscape. In 794, Emperor Kemu fixed the capital at Kyoto, ushering in the Heian period, a golden era of imperial culture. Yet while the court dazzled with elegance, its power over the rest of Japan weakened. Regional nobles rose, forming warrior clans backed by samurai armies. The stage was set for centuries of epic battles, shifting alliances, and a society forged in both ambition and blood. As Japan's imperial court grew grand and ceremonial in Kyoto, real power quietly slipped from its hands. Regional noble families, backed by elite samurai warriors, began carving the land into their own territories. Among the most powerful were the Taira and Minamoto clans, whose rivalries would ignite the first major conflicts in Japanese history. In 1160, disputes over imperial succession erupted into the Hogan Rebellion, followed by the Genpei War, 1180 to 1185, a brutal struggle for dominance. It was the Minamoto clan, under the leadership of Yoritomo, who ultimately emerged victorious, establishing a new military government far from the capital, in Kamakura. In 1192, Yoritomo secured the title of shogun, making him the de facto ruler of Japan. For the next 7 centuries, the shogun would hold power, while emperors became symbolic figureheads. Yet this era of military rule was far from peaceful. Japan faced external threats, most famously from the Mongol Empire. Twice, in 1274 and 1281, massive Mongol fleets tried to invade, only to be destroyed by violent typhoons, the kamikaze or divine winds, which the Japanese saw as heavenly intervention. Even with foreign threats repelled, internal tension simmered. Samurai often went unpaid, and regional lords, daimyos, grew restless. Coups and uprisings reshaped power repeatedly, demonstrating that Japan's story was not one of smooth rule, but of constant struggle, ambition, and the fragile balance between authority and rebellion. This chaotic era, though violent, also laid the groundwork for the Japan that would later meet European traders, firearms, and ideas, setting the stage for a nation on the brink of transformation. In the next part, we'll witness the arrival of the Portuguese, the introduction of guns and Christianity, and the dramatic battles that began unifying Japan. The mid-16th century brought a turning point that would change Japan forever. In 1543, a Portuguese ship was blown off course onto the tiny island of Tanegashima, introducing Japan to European firearms for the first time. These guns were unlike anything the samurai had seen before, and warlords quickly realized their potential to gain an edge over rivals in the endless battles of the Warring States period. Within a decade, hundreds of thousands of firearms were in use, transforming the face of Japanese warfare. Alongside weapons, the Portuguese brought a new religion, Christianity. Missionaries converted local lords and offered them advantages in trade and military support, sparking intrigue and shifting alliances. One ambitious daimyo, Oda Nobunaga, capitalized on these foreign innovations without converting himself. Using the firepower of European guns, he began the long and bloody process of uniting Japan under his command. But even Nobunaga's brilliance could not prevent betrayal. In 1582, he was ambushed and killed, plunging the country back into uncertainty. His successor, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, a man of humble origins who rose from peasant soldier to supreme ruler, completed the unification of Japan. Hideyoshi's rise showed that talent and strategy could defy tradition, yet his reign also sowed the seeds for future conflict. Despite the unification, the balance of power remained fragile. Hideyoshi's son was still a child, leaving the country in the hands of loyal generals. Rival factions bided their time, preparing for the next showdown that would determine the future of Japan. The stage was set for a decisive clash that would end the era of constant civil war and give birth to the Tokugawa shogunate, a dynasty that would rule Japan for over 2 centuries in peace, yet with strict control and isolation from the world. In 1600, the decisive Battle of Sekigahara changed the course of Japanese history. Tokugawa Ieyasu emerged victorious over rival factions, laying the foundation for the Tokugawa shogunate, a dynasty that would rule Japan for the next 268 years. Ieyasu moved the seat of power to Edo, modern Tokyo, marking the start of the Edo period. For the first time, Japan experienced prolonged peace and stability after centuries of brutal civil wars. This era of peace brought prosperity, agriculture flourished, commerce expanded, and cities grew. Culture thrived as art, theater, and literature reached unprecedented heights. Yet, this golden age came at a cost. The Tokugawa shoguns, determined to prevent any threat to their authority, enforced strict social hierarchies and suppressed potential rebellion with severe measures. Christianity, seen as a threat to stability, was banned entirely, and foreign influence was tightly controlled. By 1639, the shogunate introduced sakoku, a policy that closed Japan to almost all outsiders. Trade was limited to the Dutch and Chinese at specific ports, and Japanese citizens were forbidden from leaving the country. For over 2 centuries, Japan existed in near-total isolation, developing a unique culture and society untouched by the wider world. The country prospered internally, roads were built, schools were founded, and the population doubled. Yet beneath the calm, tension simmered, famines, rigid social rules, and a growing curiosity about the outside world quietly tested the shogunate's control. Despite its isolation, Japan was not completely cut off. Dutch books brought Western knowledge of science and technology, slowly influencing the elite. By the late 18th and early 19th centuries, cracks began to appear in the shogunate's power. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation with the outside world, one that would shatter centuries of isolation and propel Japan onto the global stage. By the mid-19th century, the world outside Japan was changing rapidly, and the isolated island nation could no longer remain untouched. In 1853, a fleet of American warships, led by Commodore Matthew Perry, appeared in Edo Bay. The U.S. demanded that Japan open its ports to international trade, backed by the threat of overwhelming military force. Faced with superior firepower, the Tokugawa shogunate reluctantly agreed, ending over 200 years of isolation. This forced opening ignited outrage among many Japanese, especially in the southern provinces of Choshu and Satsuma. They saw the shogunate's capitulation to foreign powers as a betrayal. Alliances formed, and in 1868, these forces convinced the young Emperor Meiji to restore imperial power. The shogunate was overthrown, and Japan entered the Meiji Restoration, a period of rapid modernization and transformation. Under the Meiji government, Japan embarked on an ambitious journey to catch up with the Western powers. Railways and telegraph lines crisscrossed the country, schools spread modern education, and industrialization accelerated. The military was rebuilt using the latest Western tactics and technology, ensuring that Japan could defend itself against foreign threats. Christianity was legalized, and Western experts were invited to share knowledge in fields from law and banking to transportation and mining. The Meiji Restoration marked a dramatic turning point. Japan was no longer a secluded island, it was a nation determined to assert itself on the world stage. Yet even as the country modernized, internal tensions remained. Traditional samurai, once the backbone of Japan's military, struggled to find their place in this new era. The clash between old and new would define Japan's journey into the 20th century, setting the stage for its emergence as a regional and eventually global power. With modernization in full swing, Japan quickly transformed into a formidable power. By the late 19th century, it had secured control over Hokkaido, annexed the Ryukyu Islands, and turned its attention abroad. In the First Sino-Japanese War, 1894–1895, Japan's modernized army defeated China, gaining Taiwan and signaling to the world that a new Asian power had arrived. Alliances with Britain and victories against Russia in the Russo-Japanese War, 1904–1905, further cemented Japan's status, marking the first time in centuries that an Asian nation had decisively defeated a Western power. Japan's expansion continued, culminating in the annexation of Korea in 1910. By the early 20th century, it was no longer a regional actor, it was a global contender. Participation in World War I brought new colonies and international recognition, but the post-war period also stirred nationalist and militaristic ambitions. Tensions with Western powers grew, leading to the events that would draw Japan into World War II. From 1941, Japan's military sought to secure resources and territory across Asia, culminating in the attack on Pearl Harbor. The ensuing Pacific War tested the nation's resilience, bringing devastation and ultimately surrender in 1945. Yet Japan's story did not end in defeat. Emerging from ruins, the nation rebuilt itself into a peaceful, technologically advanced, and globally influential society. From the isolation of sakoku to becoming a world power, Japan's journey is a saga of resilience, ambition, and transformation. It is a story of warriors, emperors, foreign influences, and bold reforms, a testament to a nation that constantly reinvented itself while preserving its identity. And it is this unique journey that makes Japan not just a country, but a living story that continues to inspire the world today.